There was a moment, just one single moment, that made the entire room go still. Prince Louis, the youngest child of the Prince and Princess of Wales, slowly bowed his head, his tiny hands clasped together, his eyes closed, and for a heartbeat that felt like eternity, not a single soul in that grand hall dared to breathe. Even the monarch, King Charles himself, sat frozen, his expression a mixture of shock, pride, and something far deeper that words struggled to capture. The cameras caught it. The world saw it. And what happened next left millions around the globe reaching for tissues they didn't know they'd need. But to understand why this one gesture from a 5-year-old prince shook the very foundations of the British monarchy, we need to go back to the whispers inside palace walls, back to the private struggles no one was supposed to see, and back to a family navigating tradition, grief, and the weight of a crown that grows heavier with every passing generation. What was Prince Louis reacting to? Why did King Charles go completely speechless? And what unfolded in the moments after that left senior royals visibly emotional? Stay with us, because the full story is far more powerful than any headline could ever convey. A child unlike any other royal. Prince Louis Arthur Charles of Wales was born on April 23, 2018, at St. Mary's Hospital in London. He arrived as a third child of Prince William and Catherine Middleton, slotting into the royal hierarchy behind his older brother Prince George and his sister Princess Charlotte. From the very beginning, Louis was different, not in the way the palace protocols would define different, not in lineage or succession or title, but in spirit, in raw, unfiltered, beautifully chaotic spirit. The world got its first real taste of Prince Louis's personality during Queen Elizabeth II Platinum Jubilee celebrations in June 2022. While the royal family sat in the royal box, maintaining the kind of composed dignity that centuries of tradition demanded, 4-year-old Louis had other plans entirely. He covered his ears during the flight past. He made exaggerated faces at his mother. He stuck out his tongue. He squirmed. He waved wildly. He put his hand over his great-grandmother's mouth, yes, the Queen's mouth, and the entire world watched in a mixture of horror and absolute delight. Social media exploded. Memes were born. Headlines screamed about the little prince who couldn't sit still. But beneath the laughter, something deeper was happening. People saw themselves in Louis. They saw their own children, their own grandchildren, their own humanity reflected back at them from inside one of the most controlled and curated institutions on earth. Prince Louis, without even trying, was breaking down walls that centuries of royal protocol had carefully constructed. Catherine, ever the graceful mother, handled his antics with a mixture of gentle discipline and genuine amusement. Prince William, seated nearby, occasionally leaned over to whisper something in Louis's ear, words the microphones couldn't catch, but that clearly carried the loving authority of a father who understood that his son was, above all else, just a child being a child. But what the cameras didn't capture, what the public didn't see, were the conversations happening behind closed doors. Because inside Kensington Palace, William and Catherine were navigating something far more complex than a toddler's public behavior. They were making deliberate, carefully considered decisions about how to raise their children in a world that had already demonstrated, with devastating clarity, what the pressure of royal life could do to a person. They had seen it destroy marriages. They had seen it fuel eating disorders. They had seen it drive beloved family members to the brink of mental collapse. And they had seen it, in the most tragic and personal way imaginable, contribute to the death of a princess whose memory still haunted every corridor of every palace in the land. William and Catherine were determined that their children would not become casualties of the crown, and Prince Louis, with his irrepressible energy and complete disregard for royal convention, was perhaps the greatest test and the greatest triumph of that commitment. The weight behind the playfulness. Now here is where the story takes a turn that most people never saw coming. Because for all of Louis's public playfulness, for all those viral moments and adorable photo ops, There was a gravity developing within this young prince that caught even his own family off guard. Those close to the Wales family have quietly revealed that Prince Louis, despite his young age, possesses an emotional intelligence that is remarkable. He is deeply attuned to the moods of those around him. When Catherine is tired, Louis notices. When William is stressed, Louis responds. When his siblings are upset, Louis, the youngest, the baby of the family, is often the first to offer comfort. This emotional sensitivity became even more pronounced during what would become one of the most difficult periods in the Wales family's life. In early 2024, the world learned that Catherine, Princess of Wales, had been diagnosed with cancer. The announcement sent shockwaves across the globe. Catherine, who had always appeared a picture of health and vitality, revealed in a deeply personal video message that she had undergone major abdominal surgery and that subsequent tests had revealed the presence of cancer, necessitating preventative chemotherapy. The news was devastating. For the public, it was a moment of collective grief, a reminder that no amount of wealth, privilege, or royal status could shield a person from the cruel randomness of illness. For the royal family, it was a crisis that demanded strength, unity, and an extraordinary degree of privacy during a time when the entire world was watching. But for three young children, George, Charlotte, and Louis, it was something else entirely. It was the terrifying reality that their mother was sick, that the woman who braided Charlotte's hair and kissed Louis's scraped knees and helped George with his homework was fighting a battle that even she couldn't control. William and Catherine made the decision to tell their children about the diagnosis themselves. In their own way, in their own time. They waited until the end of the school term. To minimize disruption, they used language that was age-appropriate, but honest, and they surrounded their children with as much normalcy and love as humanly possible during a period that was anything but normal. Prince Louis, sources close to the family would later reveal, responded to news with a quiet solemnity that was entirely unexpected from a child known for his exuberance. He didn't fully understand the medical terminology, of course, but he understood enough. He understood that his mummy was going through something painful. He understood that she needed rest. And he understood, in the way that children sometimes understand things more purely than adults ever can, that his love mattered, that being gentle, being kind, being present was the most important thing he could do. Underscore, 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 underscore. The moment that stopped the world. And this brings us to the moment that the title of this story promises. The moment that silenced a room full of dignitaries, monarchs, and world leaders. The moment that made even King Charles III, a man who has waited his entire life for the crown, go completely and utterly speechless. It happened during a significant royal event, one of those carefully choreographed occasions where every movement is planned, every gesture rehearsed, every word scripted. The kind of event where children, especially young royal children, are expected to sit quietly, look presentable, and above all, follow the program. Prince Louis had been seated alongside his family. He was dressed impeccably, a miniature version of royal perfection, his hair combed, his shoes polished, his posture surprisingly composed for a child his age. Those who had watched his jubilee antics might have expected another round of entertaining mischief. But something was different this time. Something had shifted, as a moment of reflection was called. A solemn pause in the proceedings to honor those who had served, those who had sacrificed, and those who had been lost. Something extraordinary happened. Without being prompted, without being told, without anyone guiding his small body into position, Prince Louis bowed his head. He didn't just tilt it slightly in a casual nod. He bowed it with purpose, with intention, with a gravity that seemed impossible for someone so young. His eyes closed. His small hands came together in front of him, and he held that position, perfectly still, perfectly silent, perfectly reverent, while the world watched. The cameras captured it from multiple angles. Close-ups showed the gentle furrow of his brow, the way his lips pressed together in concentration, the absolute stillness of his small frame. And around him, the reaction was immediate and profound. Catherine, sitting beside him, noticed first. Her hand moved instinctively toward him, not to correct him, not to guide him, but simply to rest on his back in a gesture of maternal pride so raw and so real that it transcended all royal protocol. Her eyes glistened. She blinked rapidly, pressing her lips together in that way she does when she's fighting to maintain composure in public. Prince William, on Louis's other side, turned his head slightly. His jaw tightened. He stared at his youngest son for a long, unbroken moment, and those close enough to see his expression later described it as a look of overwhelming love mixed with something almost like awe, as if he was seeing his son clearly, perhaps for the first time, not as the playful toddler the world had come to adore, but as a person of depth and feeling and remarkable grace. But the most striking reaction came from King Charles. The monarch, seated in his position of honor, had been following proceedings with the practiced composure of a man who had attended thousands of such events over 7 decades. His posture was perfect. His expression was measured. He was, as always, the embodiment of royal restraint. And then he saw Louis, his grandson, his youngest grandchild from his eldest son, this small boy with a mischievous grin and the irrepressible spirit, bowing his head in a moment of such genuine reverence that it seemed to carry the weight of generations. King Charles's expression changed. It didn't crack. That would be too dramatic a word for a man who has spent his entire life mastering the art of public composure. But it shifted, softened, opened. His eyes widened slightly. His lips parted almost imperceptibly. And for several seconds that felt like minutes to those who witnessed it, the King of England simply stared at his grandson, completely and utterly speechless. Those who were present later described the atmosphere as electric, not in the loud, buzzing sense of the word, but in a way that the air itself seemed to change, charged with an emotion so collective and so profound that strangers found themselves making eye contact with tear-filled eyes, united by the shared witness of something unexpectedly beautiful. What happened next? When the moment of reflection ended and the proceedings resumed, Prince Louis lifted his head. He looked up at his mother first, then at his father, and then, in a gesture that would later be replayed millions of times across social media, he looked directly at King Charles, and he smiled. Not one of his famous cheeky grins, not one of his tongue-poking, ear-covering, camera-mugging expressions, but a small, gentle, knowing smile, the kind of smile that said, without words, "I understand, I'm here, and I love you." King Charles, for the first time in what observers noted was a remarkably long period, broke protocol. He didn't wave. He didn't nod in formal acknowledgement. He simply pressed his hand to his chest, over his heart, and held it there, his eyes locked on Louis, his carefully maintained composure finally, beautifully, momentarily undone. The gesture lasted only seconds, but it spoke volumes about a relationship that the public rarely sees, the bond between a grandfather and his grandson, stripped of all titles, all protocol, all pretense. In that moment, Charles wasn't a king. Louis wasn't a prince. They were simply family, connected by love, by loss, by the shared understanding that some things matter more than crowns, the deeper significance. To understand why this moment resonated so deeply, not just with the royal family, but with millions around the world, we need to look at the broader context of what the monarchy has been through in recent years. The death of Queen Elizabeth II in September 2022 marked the end of an era. For 70 years, she had been the constant, the steady, unwavering presence at the heart of British public life. Her passing left a void that no amount of ceremony or tradition could immediately fill. King Charles ascended the throne carrying not just a crown, but the enormous weight of his mother's legacy, his own complicated public image, and the expectations of a nation uncertain about the future of the institution he now led. The challenges were relentless. The rift with Prince Harry and Meghan Markle had exposed deep fractures within the family, played out in tell-all interviews, Netflix documentaries, and a best-selling memoir that spared no one. Public opinion polls showed declining support for the monarchy, particularly among younger generations. Questions about the institution's relevance in the modern world grew louder and more persistent. And then came the health crises. First, Catherine's cancer diagnosis, which pulled her from public life for months during a period when the monarchy desperately needed visible, active members. Then King Charles's own cancer diagnosis, revealed just weeks before Catherine's, which raised terrifying questions about the continuity and stability of the royal family at its highest levels. The monarchy was, by any measure, in a period of profound vulnerability. And yet here, in this single moment, a child bowing his head, a grandfather pressing his hand to his heart, something shifted, something healed, something reminded the world why. Despite all the controversy and criticism, despite the scandals and the struggles, this family still mattered. Because Prince Louis didn't bow his head because someone told him to. He didn't do it for the cameras. He didn't do it because he understood the political implications or the public relations value. He did it because he felt it. Because something inside this small, spirited, magnificently human child responded to a moment of solemnity with genuine reverence. And in doing so, he embodied everything that the monarchy at its best is supposed to represent. Duty, service, respect, humility, connection, not the stiff, performative version of these qualities that critics rightly mock, but the real, lived, felt versions, the kind that can't be rehearsed or manufactured, the kind that can only come from a heart that hasn't yet learned to protect itself from the world. A family transformed. In the days and weeks that followed, the moment continued to reverberate. Social media was flooded with clips, photos, and emotional reactions. Parents shared stories of their own children's surprising moments of depth and sensitivity. Royal commentators debated the significance of what they had witnessed. And inside the palace walls, according to those with knowledge of the family's private life, the moment sparked conversations that had been long overdue. King Charles, deeply moved by what had transpired, reportedly made a renewed effort to spend more time with his grandchildren, not in formal settings, not at official events, but in the quiet, ordinary moments that build real relationships. Garden walks at Highgrove, painting sessions in his studio, storytelling before bed, the kind of moments that his own childhood, by many accounts, had lacked and that he was now determined to create for the next generation. William and Catherine, meanwhile, continued their commitment to raising their children with as much normalcy as possible. Louis returned to school. He played with his friends. He made his messes and threw his tantrums and laughed his infectious laugh. The moment of solemn grace did not transform him into a miniature statesman. He remained beautifully and defiantly a child. But those close to the family noticed something. A quiet confidence in Louis that hadn't been there before. A sense that he understood, perhaps intuitively, that he had done something meaningful, that his simple gesture had touched people in ways he couldn't fully comprehend. And with that understanding came a bearing, a stillness, a depth that sat comfortably alongside his natural exuberance. The legacy of a gesture. History will remember many things about the modern British monarchy, the scandals, the reforms, the controversies, the triumphs. But for millions of people around the world, one of the most enduring images of this era will be a small boy with tousled hair and a gentle heart, bowing his head in a moment of quiet reverence while the world held its breath. Prince Louis didn't change history that day. He didn't broker peace or sign treaties or deliver speeches that moved nations. He did something far simpler and far more powerful. He reminded us, all of us, that beneath the titles, beneath the crowns, beneath the centuries of protocol and tradition and expectation, the royal family is exactly that, a family made up of human beings who love, who grieve, who struggle, who hope, and who sometimes, in the most unexpected moments, reveal the very best of what humanity can be. Even the monarch was speechless, and perhaps that was the point. Perhaps the most powerful statement a king can make is silence, the kind of awed, humbled, deeply moved silence that comes from watching a child do something that no amount of preparation or education or royal training can teach. Prince Louis bowed his head, and in doing so, he lifted an entire nation's heart. What do you think of Prince Louis's remarkable gesture? Do you believe the youngest royals are changing the face of the monarchy? Share your thoughts with us in the comment section below. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more compelling stories about the royal family. And click the next video showing on your screen. You will not want to miss it.